Hey, Timothy Unkert here. This is part two of my Java 101 series. We're going to start off by talking about strings here. So you'll see I've created a file called strings005. Again, this naming convention is something I wouldn't use in production, but I'm using for this tutorial. And I've created my main method. And now I'm going to create a string. So I do an uppercase S, TIRNG string. Let's call the variable name, and we'll set it to my name. So Timothy, okay? And let's say we wanted to print out the first character of the string. So I can do my shortcut here, sout, to get system.out.println. And then let's do name dot, and we're going to do, let's see, this one here, car at, okay? So we'll choose that one, and we'll start at index 0, okay? Okay, now let's build and run this. So you can see down here that's building, okay? Here we go. Okay, and so we get the first letter. Now let's try something else. Let's duplicate this line, and let's try a -1. Okay, that works in some other languages. Does it work in Java? Okay, so let's build and compile this. This would be for the last letter of the name. So we're going ahead, we're building. And we get an error, okay? So it doesn't like that. So we don't want to do it that way, okay? Instead, we want to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so we want index 13, okay? Now, let's go ahead and let's print that. And if you noticed, I had a little warning up here before. So now you got this green check, except for the little squigglies, which is just one typo saying my last name is the typo. But this should give us the lowercase t at the end of the string. Okay. Okay, and we do get the lowercase t at the end of the string. Okay. So let me make a comment here. If we remember, we make a comment with 2 forward slashes. So we'll say print the first character of the string. And we'll go down here and we'll say that we are printing the last character of the string, okay? And then we'll go down here, and what we're going to do now is we are going to basically now print out a substring, okay? So let's print out a substring. Let's try, all right, so let's try and print out just my first name. Okay, so we'll do system.out.println, and then we'll do name dot, and we'll do, and it's going to start to give us a bunch of choices. So we'll type sub, and then we want the substring, and you can see we can do substring with just the beginning index, and that would print to the end of the string. And we can also do substring with the beginning of the index and print to the end of the index. I want that one. Now it's just going to give me substring. Okay, so let's start with 0, and let's go, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do 0, 6 and see what that gives us, okay? All right, so now we'll build and run. You see it's building down here. And again, from the terminal, if you're doing it, you do javac, the name of the file, and then to run it, Java, and the file that it outputted from the compiling. Okay, so we've got Timoth. Okay, so notice that. So again, let's count this. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's not including the last index. So we actually have to make this 7. And now, if we build and compile it, we should get the full name Timothy, okay? So go ahead and run this. And now we get Timothy, okay? So it's important when you're learning a language like this to play with this kind of stuff. Does it include this index 7 here? Etc. So again, let's count it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, because this is 7 letters. My first name's 7 letters long. The last index is 6. Okay, so we want to go one higher than that to actually get it to print. Okay. Now let's try something else. Let's print out my last name. Okay, so we said this is index 7, this is index 8. So remember, if we had the choices, we could just do the beginning index. So let's try index 8. Okay, so let's print out my last name. So we'll do S out, my abbreviation that my IDE gives me, and then name dot, and we'll do, now this is being a little slow. We just want to give a beginning index here. It's a little slow because I'm recording. And let's try 8. Okay, so we've put in the beginning index of 8. Okay, and let's print this out. And it's building, and it will be running. You see parsing Java finished. It's going to pop up right here, and we get my last name, Unkert. Okay, no space before it. We just get the full last bit of the string. So that's how you do substrings with strings. I think that's all I'm going to cover with strings right now. And what we're going to do now is talk about for loops. Okay, so we'll talk about iterating through some code. Okay. All right, so let's do a new Java class. Let's call this for loops. And actually, I don't want to put it, that would put it out here. I want to put it in the source folder here. So let's go new Java class. Let's do for loops 006. Okay. It's going to create that file for me. And so we've got this public class for loops 006. Again, with the naming convention, just take that with a grain of salt. It's for this tutorial. All right, so I'm going to type main and hit tab, and that's going to give me this public static void main, parentheses string, brackets args. Okay, talk more about that later. That has to do with giving arguments to the command line, which is not that typical anymore. But anyway, so that's why that's there. Okay. All right. So what I want to do now is talk about for loops, and let's say we wanted to print out 1 through 10. Now I could do it a really bad way of doing it. So I could do 1, and then I could do this if I really wanted to. Okay, and if I run this, I'm going to get 1 through 10, right? But this isn't really that efficient. Okay. Okay, so if I scroll up here, I see I get 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 10. We really don't want to do this. Let's say I wanted to print out 1 through 100. That would be a lot of effort. Or 1 through 1,000. That would be a lot of effort, right? So we can use a for loop. All right. Now there's a couple different ways that you may see this done. You may see now for loop has a variable that you iterate over. So you might see something like where you declare an integer, typically something like I, up here, and then you say for I equals 0, I is, if we want to do 1 through 10, let's do 1, and then let's do less than 11, and then we can increment I with I plus plus, okay? And then we have our loop here, and what we could do is we could print out I, and this is going to give me 1 through 10, and it's a lot less lines of code, right? And especially if it was like 1 through 100. So let's build this, okay? And you'll see it's building. And you see we get the same result. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay? Now, this is one way you might see it, but you also might see a declaration of the integer I. See, it turns red because I haven't declared it. You might see we declare and initialize it right in the for loop. So I say int I equals 1. Now, when I do it this way, the variable only has the scope within inside the for loop. If I declared it outside the for loop and then used it inside the for loop, I could also use it outside the for loop. So if I go right here and I do, if I go to print I, now let's see what my IDE is giving me this big red here, right? Let's actually say int I equals 0 here, okay? So now let's see, it's still giving me a warning. Variable I is already defined in this scope, okay? So it's actually saying, hey, we've defined it up here, but then it's giving me this error. Cannot resolve the symbol I, okay? So if I said int I here, it's not liking it, all right? But so let's just run it here. Let's see if I can explain this. Maybe I'm not explaining it greatly, but let's run it here, and we'll show you that even though I only have now basically 3 lines here of code, a very short amount of code. Why is this not running? Let me run it. Try that again. Okay, so now it's going. You can see it. It's going here, and it's going to pop up, and we'll get 1 through 10, like we did in the last one. Okay, so we get 1 through 10. All right, so cool. Now, if I just said I equals 1 here, and I went and I declared int I up here, and then down here, I said, well, let's print out what I is. Notice that I'm getting no problems, right? No problems with this, okay? So if I want to keep it outside this for loop, this would be the method I would want to use, all right? And so if I run it, now I get that the last I is equal to 11. It jumped outside the for loop, and I is equal to 11. So that works all good, okay? But if I get rid of this and I declare it in here, okay, so it's declared within inside the for loop. Now it's saying cannot resolve it. Let's try and run it now. Will it actually work? And I'm giving you a hint. This is giving me a hint that there might be a problem, okay? And we see that we can't find symbols, so it doesn't compile here. Okay, so this method here, this is what I'm trying to explain. This method here makes it only available within inside the for loop, okay? If I declare it outside, then it's available within the for loop and outside the for loop. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so that's for loops. Let's talk about another type of loop, which is a while loop. So create a new Java class, and we'll call this while loops. This is going to be 007, okay? And we're going to create a main. So I'll type main, hit tab. I get that autocomplete of this boilerplate code, which is kind of nice. And for a while loop, I actually do want to declare the index outside of the loop. So if I'm using I as an index or an iterator, something I can iterate over, I want to declare that outside of the loop if I'm using that to say when to break the loop, okay? Now, interesting thing about this, you have to be careful with while loops or you could end up in an infinite loop. And let's do that. So let's say int I equals 1. We'll say while I is less than 11, and we'll just print out I, okay? Now let's see. Condition I is, now it's giving me a warning. Condition I is less than 11 is always true. Variable I is not updated inside loop. So let's see what happens here. All right, so Let's run this. And it's still running here. We're just getting ones, okay? So I'm going to stop this, hopefully. So process finished. I interrupted the keyboard signal here. So I stopped it, but we had an infinite loop there. The reason being is I'm not changing the value of I. So I just am printing out I. I is always 1. It's always less than 11, so it's always going to be running. So what I need to do inside this loop is I need to change the value of I. So I can do that with something like I equals I plus 1. Okay. So now you'll see the warning goes away. I got a nice green check mark. It's not going to be an infinite loop. Let's build and compile. And you should see that this will print out 1 through 10. And we're going ahead. And if you see down here, we've got 1 through 10, exit code 0. That's always good. So 1 through 10. All right. One other thing I want to talk about is some languages allow a do-while loop. So let's say you didn't know whether Java does or not. Well, let's just try it. So we'll say do, and we'll say while. Let's do I is less than 7. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we'll print something out, and we'll print out I. Okay. All right, so let's see what this warning. So condition I is, well, actually, hovered off of it. Condition I is less than 7 is always false. Variable I is not updated inside the loop. So again, we'd want to update this. So I equals I plus 1. Let's just increment it. All right, so now let's run this. Okay. And so we get 11. Okay. So where do we get the 11 from? Actually, let's do something here. Let's do, we'll print something like inside, if I can spell, inside do while loop. Print something here. Let's do in between loops. Okay. And let's now run this. Okay. And maybe this will illustrate a little bit better about what is going on. So in between loops here, and then 11, we're inside the do while loop. Okay. And now let's actually print out I one more time. So we'll just build and run this. So we're building it. And so we're going to go ahead and run. Okay, and so we say inside do while loop. Then we get outside and we print 12. So it did increment as well. Now notice this condition I is less than 7 is going to be false coming in here. But the cool thing about the do while loop is even if the condition isn't met, it will run at least once, which it did. So that's the difference between a while and a do while loop. So I think that's all I wanted to cover for part 2 of my Java 101. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you did, please give it a like, as it will help get out to more people. And also consider subscribing to the channel, as it really does help the channel grow. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.